Hi there. Welcome to the Vulnerable Scientist podcast. This is just another episode that has been repurposed from the science media interviews. The guest is Lydia Kisoo, and I'm excited about this podcast because this is someone who was in the same space that I was before she moved to UK, and I think she's coming back to finish her master's project. So listen in and enjoy, and I hope you get something from it.
My name is Lydia. Currently, I'm a master's student at the University of Liverpool, doing Masters of Public Health under the Wellcome Trust scholarship. So currently, I'm a full-time student, so that's it. So I have a background in biotechnology. I heard Valerie say that you are a recent graduate in science, so yeah, that's where my background is, and I'm happy to speak to you both, all the three of you. So Sarah mentioned this to me, and I find it quite an interesting thing. Just to tell someone else that there is hope in science, and in career, and if not, then there is hope elsewhere. Yeah, so I appreciate and even your time and even the opportunity to interview me, other than the small delay that happened. I hope I'm forgiven for that. So back to my background, where I was born. I'm a Kenyan by origin, Kenyan. So I was born in Kisoo County. My parents at that time, they used to work in Kisoo County. So we used to stay in Kisoo town, where I was born and raised up for my early ages until I went to primary school, where we reverted back to our grandparents' home. And then I studied in a primary school called Maranatha Academy School, where I finished in 2009. Yeah, and then I joined high school, Chondoni Girls, where I between 2010 and 2013. Then from that, I joined Jomo Kenyatta University, where I did my Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology. That is between 2014 and 2018, where I graduated. After that, I interned with ILRI for 1 year on ILRI at the same time. And then from that, I worked as a research assistant for like 1 year, and then I became a graduate fellow for another year. Then I joined my master's. So that's basically my history. So I don't know if that answers everything about my introduction and background.
It does. We'll get into it more as we progress. For example, in the next question, where did the science interest really develop? How did it start?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I honestly, as I was growing, I used to hear people say or even watch reports by scientists all over the world, scientists by the World Health Organization, giving updates on what is really happening in the world and what is required in the medicine world, in many other fields of science. So I used to hear about scientists, but honestly, this is not one of a thing, and the very known professions back in the villages and where we grew up, because people used to tell you, study hard so that you may become a lawyer, study hard so that you may become a doctor, study hard or work hard so that you may be a nurse, a medic, or so basically no one, these were unpopular. This was unpopular field. So I never grew up saying that I want to become a scientist. Funny enough, I just wanted to become a doctor. Even in high school, I was saying that I needed to become a neurosurgeon. This kind of students, this kinds of kids were like, when I grow up, I want to become a neurosurgeon. Yes, that was me. But unfortunately, the grades did not give me that, or rather, should I say the grades, or is it the the COSIPs. I'm not a job student, but I'm a COSIP student, if you understand what that means. So I was, I got the course biotechnology through COSIP. So I really didn't know what it was, but how I came to apply for it, it's through one of my friends, family friends, which I knew while growing up, who was not really a doctor, but she was working in a medical laboratory. So they had done biochemistry, and then I was like, biochemistry, biotechnology could be quite a thing. So then if I miss nothing in med, then I can go for this, which I went for and got it at University of JQuad. That is at JQuad. So science, really, I didn't know what it is. Like, I can't tell you it was a particular interest while growing up, but I came to like it when I joined the course biotechnology. So as we learned new things and new stuff and everything, it became interesting all of a sudden. And I loved it eventually. And when I joined ILRI, particularly, I did research in antimicrobial resistance, which triggered further interest in science, and also interacting with people, senior people in science was just such an amuse to me. It was just such a great thing, and I admired them. So that's where science came in, and addressing the challenges in the public health in particular.
You know, in all fairness, as we were kids, we all wanted to be pilots and doctors. So we hope telling this story will change that narrative, because it will give scientists exposure, and possibly one day children will start saying, I want to be a scientist.
True. I hope so.
Yeah. So I'd like you to expand just a bit more on that transition from, undergraduate to postgraduate, and getting that internship. There's usually this roadblock that graduates experience after undergraduate. Just moving from there is usually it's a big hurdle. So how did you maneuver?
I agree with you. It's quite a challenge when you're there, because you don't know. Yes, you're studying the degree, even if it's the engineering degree that everyone wants, or the med degree that everyone wants to do. There is that challenge, the transition challenge. So honestly, one thing, and I always tell people, is that I am quite a religious person and a Christian. So I believe in God, and I believe that we don't control our lives, that it's God who does it. So, and as you just need to ask what you need from Him, and He is faithful enough, and He knows what you deserve more than you do. So at that time, honestly, in my power, I didn't know what was holding for my life and science and everything. But this one lecturer who was teaching us certain units called molecular techniques is, I don't know if it's okay to mention names, but is a senior researcher at ILRI. So he used to do part-time lecturing in JQuad, where we came to interact, and then as a result, I asked him for an attachment opportunity, and he told me, yeah, you can apply, and then through ILRI, and then you can get attached. Well, I knew he told us clearly that ILRI doesn't pay for attachments. We actually did pay for attachments, so it was quite a sacrifice. You imagine whereby you're in Nairobi, and then you need a rent, you need food. So the parents had to fund me to undertake that attachment. So I would say that set really quite a good base for me to start off. But before that, in second year, I can say when I joined campus, we used to have the long holiday. So after my first year, for the long holiday, I went and taught in my the school that I was schooling in, and I switched between two schools. So I taught biology, chemistry, and maths. Those are untrained teachers, the PTA employed or BOM employed teachers. So I was one of them. I did teaching for that one holiday, but the following holiday I was out just to see what happens in the field that I am in. So before Cambridge, I didn't mention this. I worked at Calro, the previously known ILRI at Katumani, Machakos. So I just went there, dropped in my attachment letters. I told them I'm willing to work for anything and without pay, and I'll just sort myself out. So they agreed to give me an opportunity. At that point, I didn't pay anything to Calro, but I worked for free. So I worked in two departments, biotechnology, for one project that was working towards a GMO maize. It was called the Wema Maize Project, and another one that was working towards aflatoxin-free foods that was under if you've heard about the IITA organization. So it had labs in the Calro, Machakos. So I worked under that, and it was intense. So we used to, you see, sometimes attachments in Kenyan organizations are relaxed. Like you get yourself reporting to work at 9, getting out of there by 4, and really doing a lot of nothing. But there, trust you me, at IITA labs in Haro, it was quite intense. That's where I familiarized myself with really science at work and not just books. So from that, now when I approached this hero in the mandatory attachment, is it in that year? Yes. He gave us, not me just alone, but several of my classmates whom we attended the attachment at his lab, particularly the molecular biology lab in CMR, Cambridge. So that's where we did a lot of work in regards with AMR, and because that was like, we asked him to give us projects for our undergrad, which he did because he had a student doing master's. So he sort of segmented the project to different sections that the students, undergrad students, took up the different sections towards the master's student. So like the way master's student has one big goal, or maybe a PhD student has one larger goal, and then the different objectives were divided among us. So that's how we got to do our own project. So we went to the field, collected samples and everything. That was sewage and sludge samples, and then we analyzed from resistance. And that's how we got the first publication as co-authors with that student who was a master's student. So that network, the network that came with approaching a lecturer, asking for an opportunity, and then getting, that's what created really a background for my science. And then after I graduated, now that I had worked for my project with this person, he recommended me to one of the bosses at ILRI who was looking for interns. And that's how I got my opportunity at ILRI as an intern, which I worked for 1 year. After 1 year, I became a research assistant. Yeah.
Can you talk more about mentorship? Because I think there's an opportunity for mentors to help bridge that gap between, somebody being a graduate and somebody actually doing something like research or working. So what has been the impact of mentors in your career so far?
Thank you for that question, Dennis. So mentorship is, as you say, it's something very important to bridge that gap between being a student and transitioning to the real research world. So having a good mentor, and a mentor is not just someone whom you look up to and what they are doing. Yeah, of course, there is that aspect where you get to see this person as excelled in this particular field and could be a good person. But a mentor to me is someone who can hold you through, not just whom you look up to and then they guide you okay, not just looking up to that person. It's just someone who guides you and holds you through, and they are available. Whenever you get your mobile phone to call them, they are available. Whenever you text them on WhatsApp, even if not promptly, because maybe they are busy, but they are available and they are ready to respond to that. So I honestly think that's what a mentor is, and they are very important, because in my case, when I interacted with this lecturer of mine who was quite interested in our performance and made him our mentor or my mentor, if it wasn't for his network, okay, mentorship and network they go together, because if you want someone to be your mentor, it's someone who can connect also to other networks that can also help you, and also that person should be in your network. So one important thing is creation of network and then mentorship. So this person, almost mentioning names. So this mentor of mine or lecturer of mine took us through the project and mentored through the project. And then we went back to campus, and then we graduated. The same mentor took us through a recommendation. He recommended us to ILRI. You see, that's where now, like, introducing us to other networks. So as much as we were not paying it initially at Cambridge, whatever I gained through the mentorship was much more than money and cash and everything. So this guy was in a position to recommend us, but again, when you're recommended, also you have to show what you can bring onto the table, because I believe that if I can tell someone so and so is okay, can work for you, I've worked with him, then you also should be in a position to defend that and show actually you're good at this and you can deliver. So we were called for an interview, and even together with the recommendation, we had to like prove his words right, employer. And so honestly, I don't know if I've exhausted about the mentorship roles, but that was the mentor who gave a basement for my science, for my scientific research field. But now at ILRI, I also went further to create more networks and mentors. So it's important to have maybe one or two mentors, but I honestly think I have more than that. So because you find you need a mentor in this particular thing, and that. So, and also depending on the availabilities. So at ILRI, I also had to create a room for new mentors and approached them. My immediate supervisor at ILRI, she's a postdoc there. So she was very open, and she was a lady who could listen to, and not just listen to you. You could sit with them off work, off anything with regards to work, and just tell each other your stories, which was just so comfortable. Like this person made me comfortable around them, and I also opened up to them in regards to other things, not just profession. So when it came to the time of applying for this scholarship, I also opened up to them and told them, I feel I need to apply for this opportunity, but I feel I'm not okay with it. I'm not confident. She encouraged me. She was like, we're going to write recommendations and reference letters to you. We're going to apply for this thing. She walked me through the process. And even if I called her, I remember at some point she was at office by 6 a.m. just to do my reference. So honestly, mentors are very important people in our lives as scientists.
And I think from your story, you can really see how crucial mentorship was to getting you to that place where we can actually start recommending you as a mentor yourself. But before we get to that, can we talk about some of the research that you have done and some of the interesting results that you got from the research?
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I can be a mentor. I don't know if I'm equipped enough, but if someone can refer you to someone else, then I can be a mentor. Anyway, so I don't know if you're asking about my research right from my undergrad, or is it what I'm doing currently? Sorry, say that again, please.
You can just start from undergrad to how you transitioned to postgrad and to where you are right now.
Okay. So basically my research, other than the initial attachment that I told you, I just got introduced to molecular technique skills and everything at Cairo, which was important because it played a good role in my basis and foundation. I think that my major or intense background started when I was in Cambridge, because that's where I got to know how to carry on a project right from scratch, starting from doing planning on how the project is going to be carried out, to sample collections. That's the field work, to lab work, to data analysis, and to reporting, and then eventually the publication. So I'll give detailed information on this because this is where I feel it was much essential. So I did AMR, the antimicrobial resistance in bacteria, Enterobacteriaceae. If I don't know if there is a microbiologist here, but Enterobacteriaceae are just gram-negative bacteria that you can easily find in the environment, and also they include the commensal bacteria. I studied, or I compared the phenotypes and genotypes of antimicrobial resistant Enterobacteriaceae in sewage and sludge in Kibera informal settlement. So that was basically the topic of my research work. And what I looked at is at the resistant against 16 different antimicrobials, including penicillins, first and second cephalosporins, third and fourth generation cephalosporins, and some carbapenems. So generally, the interesting part of it is that the resistance was very high, because I was looking at the idea whereby sewage and sludge includes every trash that a human being can produce, right? So with every trash and human beings consuming a lot of antibiotics, not just human beings, but animals, and the agricultural sector using a lot of drugs and antibiotics, everything is being thrown into the environment. So taking the One Health approach view, considering animal, human, and environment, you could see the interaction. It was interesting for me to see how at the interaction of these three we could find AMR. So by looking at the sewage that collected every bit of these three, the environment, and so also human, and also animal, even though this could not be attributed to a particular thing, but now that it's in the environment, it's like a risk factor. It's a risk for human and animals. And now in genomics, we say that the genes can hop from one organism to another through plasmids. So the genes that code for or encode for resistance, for instance, if they are found in one bacteria, in that one in particular environment, they could move from one bacteria to another, and then that bacteria can be pathogenic, and then when it's treated, it can fail to work. That's basically what the study assumed. So the interesting fact is that the high rates of resistance in the environment, the data that you formulated on that, it's very important to inform the policies and everything and all the efforts. and stakeholders towards maybe frameworks and programs that that seek to address this AMR issue, because soon it's going to be a pandemic like the COVID-19. So if we don't want this, then everything needs to be strategically planned and solved, because for you to solve a problem, you must understand the problem. So my main work was just to obtain the data and try and show people, look, we have these levels of AMR in the environment, particularly in sewage and sludge, which also has some origins from the animals and humans. So from that, producing the data, I'm sure it's going to play a role in the surveillance of AMR in Africa, where data is not enough. And then in the long run, we're going to have solutions and decisions made on a basis of that data. So that's my undergrad, everything. From that, I did, when I joined ILRI for my internship, I did AMR again in zoonotic diseases. Zoonoses are a kind of diseases that can be transferred from animals to humans. So what basically I was doing is studying or doing, I was assisting in the lab, a research assistant. So basically we were doing, as part of the larger project of zoonosis surveillance in Africa and the associated AMR, what we were doing is also looking at what we targeted, 14 different 14 or 12 thereabouts, different zoonoses. So some of them we did just study of their prevalence, positive cases, negative cases by serology work in the lab, including ELISAs and what have you. Then such as the RBF, that is Rift Valley fever, Q fever, Coxiella burnetii, that is, and cysticercosis. So we did a number of diseases for the positive for the seroprevalence, that is. On further to that we did AMR for bacteria, E. coli, Salmonella, Staphylococcus aureus, and what is this another one? And Campylobacter. So for this particular fall, we tested 16 drugs again. Yeah, inclusive of penicillins, first and second generation cephalosporins, third and fourth cephalosporins, and carbapenem. So this is what we looked at that's the ESBLs. And further, these were characterized genotypically by sequencing. Yeah, and the project is, I think it ended early this year, not early this year actually, it's like around mid this year, that's when the project did end. So the findings of this study, because it was a huge study covering most areas particularly in Western Kenya, that's where the samples were collected from. The results are still being analyzed. So the interesting part is that there was still a high resistance noted in particularly all the cephalosporins and penicillins. But for the carbapenem, the resistance rate was quite low, and colistin that also. The resistance rate was quite low, but the research in that particular area is also required to check or to prevent it going further, because people are still using antibiotics in animals, humans, and what have you. So after that, I did write a proposal to welcome trust, now that I was grounded in AMR and particularly zoonosis. So my proposal was I proposed to study antimicrobial resistant Enterobacteriaceae again, but in this case, Klebsiella and E. coli, which are commensal in dairy cattle. So you see, like dairy cattle produce milk that is depended as food by most population if not all, the largest population in Kenya and in most countries. So I aimed at looking particularly what the resistant how there's the resistant rates in Enterobacterus, in E. coli and Klebsiella, in those particular sources, that is the milk, the dairy cattle, and also look at the antimicrobial usage by farmers who do this or who keep dairy cattle. So, and look at the relationship between how much the drugs are used and how much the resistance is. So that's what I proposed, and then I got a grant with the Wellcome Trust for the International Masters Fellowship to do the research, but that required me first to go and do a taught masters, which currently I am on doing in public health. And from that, I'll go back to ILRI for 18 months, carry out the study. Over.
Thank you for the detailed exposition. So I wanted to ask you, the path of a scientist it's not easy. It has its challenges. So how did you manage that, work-life balance and just managing a mental health? Because that's also another issue that is affecting a lot of young people. What are some tips that you can give us on, how you made sure you didn't succumb to the pressure?
Mental health, did you ask?
Yeah.
Did you mention?
Yes, mental health.
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I think now that I'm doing public health, currently I view mental health differently from what I used to view back then, probably because I didn't understand what it is, which now I think I understand it better than before. So mental health, I think, is something that has been overlooked in the younger, particularly generation. Well, I think also it affects the older people, but with self-realization, I think the younger generation or the current generation are more vulnerable to mental health issues. So and the fact that people don't believe that well, I know the psychiatrists are there and psychologists, but not so many people that believe that mental health is real, but it's quite eating down many people. So in terms of studies and balancing science in the science field and mental health, I would say so many factors contribute to this. And so, for instance, one, if you're a student, performance, because people expect high of you. So performance is one thing that can make you get feel like you're not meeting the standards of what people expect of you in this field. Secondly, also the performance in terms of if you don't know if you're going to qualify well in this field, you don't know if you're going to get opportunities, and also sometimes you don't know if you perform well, you will get the opportunities. Not even performing well, or you're just doing successfully your course, if you will get an opportunity to work. So that's another level of issue related to mental health. And the other thing I think now is in the real field of science. Science is just, from my point of view, I don't know if everyone feels like this, but I believe science has a lot of work in it, because it's not a fact like medicine where, when we give azithromycin to someone who has this infection, they will be okay, and that's it. Science is not that. Science is something that you try. It's a try and error. I don't know if that's the right term, but science, you have to keep trying, and and it doesn't have to work for the first or the second or even the third time. It can work for the 100th time. And even something that you initiated, like I am doing AMR, I might not, maybe in 100 years or maybe in 50 years, that's when we are going to get the real solution for AMR. I don't know. Other than the preventive measures of telling people, hey, AMR is real. Hey, minimize the use of antibiotics. Hey, the policies can be in place to control the prescription of antibiotics. Other than the preventive measures, probably a solution for the AMR, or maybe getting new drugs. Some of them might be developed way later when I'm very old and maybe not in this world. So honestly, science is something that when you start, maybe you don't have to get a solution at that point. So that can be another headache in source of mental health. Writing proposals for grant funders is also another headache. You don't know if it's going through, you don't know if you did it the right way. So honestly, it's true that mental health, we are as scientists vulnerable to this. But one good thing is that psychiatrists are in place to help people. But other than that, then we can also try and balance it ourselves. Because by the time you get to visit a psychiatrist, then it means you're at the terrible end where you have to, like, you're a sick person who needs, a critically sick person who needs a critical attention. So you don't want to get there. So the only way you can do this is by trying and balancing out life, because life is not just science. Life is you. Life has a lot of things of yourself, because you need to be a social being as well. Most scientists are not. I don't know how this is real, but honestly, I don't think not so many scientists who get time to be enough or full social beings. They don't have time for that, because they feel a lot is on their plate, and that is the priority, because that's what brings food on their table. So it's much understandable, but if you can try and balance your social life, family, check out on your family, go out, leave all the desk work, leave all the lab work, leave all the stress on looking for a job, just get yourself breaks and go have fun. That's one thing I think really helped, because putting yourself in a situation where you literally don't remember anything in science, as in, not you don't remember, but not because you don't mind about science, but it's because you don't have to be there all the time. You have other parts of life. And I say life is like a 360-degree circle that has different segments of life. There is also spiritual life. There is also economical life that's maybe it's related to what you're earning through the science. And there is also the social life. So honestly, there is so much to balance throughout the life. So that's what I think. Get yourself busy doing something else if you can.
Thank you. So now that you're on the other side, if we could say so, what opportunities can you see for people who are getting into science, undergraduate and someone even in high school is thinking about getting into science? What are some of these opportunities that maybe you have already seen or you can see developing and you'd like them to know, so that, people can have some hope even as they struggle with the academics?
You mean opportunities in terms of the field? Oh, what do you mean? Like the field where or the jobs that people can look for, and what do you mean in terms of opportunities?
Yeah, I'm talking about the fields they can venture into. Are there some new fields? Are there research opportunities and even jobs? But just basically in science, what people can do once they have finished their undergraduate.
Okay, it depends on science. On this, what kind of science are you really venturing, or are you studying? Because I believe if you're doing something like the biological sciences, then that calls for you to do real scientific research. If you're doing science in the data world, biostatistics and such, that calls you into the data analytic research field, that is. So I honestly feel that and all this, I mean, you can always personally, the background I have in biotechnology, I had an opportunity to either go to the biopharma that is the pharmaceutical production world, to the GMO production world, research world. Now I came into the animal and human research, biomedical research. So other than just one opportunity is research. The research organizations in Kenya, like you can go. Actually, I think scientists are people who have most opportunities when it comes to research, because you can go to whatever field you feel like. You can go to animal, you can go to you can switch between plants, animal, human, environment, and all that, data and all that. So KEFIs, they are the government organizations in Kenya. So we have KEFIs, we have CARO, we have PEMRI, we have KILDI, or what is it called? Yeah, the industrial one. What is it KILDI? I don't know. We have a number of research organizations that can do KEFRI, all those research organizations. You can just start by looking for an attachment. Tell them, you're going to work. You just want experience, you just want internship. You can pay for the attachment, that is, and trust you me, that will pay back. You not necessarily need money at that time you don't need them to compensate to you, but that opportunity might create another opportunity in future. So you can just try and see if you can get another source of survival, and you don't have to live like a princess or a prince or a king or a queen. You can just live in the simplest life ever, and then bearing in mind that can bear good fruits in future, because you don't have it's not like a guarantee that you're going to land a job immediately you graduate if you don't have networks. Or you can just be lucky enough and apply to these places when you're graduated with your first class or second upper and land a good job. Maybe that's luck and God, but try and work towards that. Create networks and then cling on to someone who can help you if you find them. But when you don't have to necessarily find a lecturer and cling on to them that I did. You can just go walk into an office of that research organization. There are the NGOs now. When is it? I don't know. ILRI, is it an NGO? There is ILRI. There is ISIPE. There is it IFRI or ICRISAT? There are a number of research organizations. Walk in, tell them, or if like everywhere you're not allowed to walk in, just search online how you can apply for the internship. Apply for as many as you can, and then you start from there, and then something good will come out of that. In terms of opportunities, as you maybe as you proceed as a scientist, I would say writing grants and proposals is one very important skill that one will have, because like the Wellcome Trust, I had to write a research proposal in order for me to get a scholarship. Not only that, but when you're looking for opportunities like the scholarship opportunities, like the Commonwealth, like you have to show them that you really have an idea. And one thing that I learned is that they really value someone who has an idea of what they are going to do. You don't just tell them that, hey, give me a master's opportunity. Hey, I don't know what I want to do. I'll figure out later, but give me a master's opportunity. While someone else says, hey, I need to check out this thing, 1, 2, 3. Can I get a master's opportunity? This is how the funders are going to view you differently, because this person knows what they want to do, what they want to address, but this other person's like, yeah, give me this opportunity, I can figure out later what I can do with this money. Yeah, so that's one thing that if you're really up to being a scholar, when you do your bachelor's and even master's, you might all just be at the lab level, and you don't want to be at the lab level doing your research all your life. And honestly, that's not going to pay you the huge loads of money that scientists are getting out here. So you want to get out there and make statements, scientific statements that influence the world policies and everything that happens around the science and addressing challenges all over the world. So for you to be that, you have to be a scholar, finish your PhD, become a postdoc, then become a scientist. If you stop at the master's level like where I am, yeah, we are going to be, we say kanda ya mukono. I don't know if you all get what I mean. You're going to be to a mukono, like you'll be working in the laboratory in that age. Yeah. Your boss comes in and tells you, I want results. Yes, you're going to produce results. Then get your some small pennies there and then go and eat, sleep, wake up, and that's going to be the routine. So I encourage everyone to further their studies so that they can be good people and important people in this field.
Have you considered doing any mentorship so far?
Honestly, doing mentorship is like a matter of heart. And I believe that God gives you the grace to do so, because for you, it's like a diagnosis and giving medication. Or rather, it's like a vaccine that prevents you from falling into a trap. And as we all say that doctors are not just professions, but it's a call to be a doctor. In case being a mentor, it's not very easy, because you need to know that someone's career life is into your, maybe not entirely into your hands, but you are responsible to guide them and show them the way or the pathway through it all. And if they fail, then you're going to be guilty and you're going to be responsible and blamed for that. So not just because anyone will ask you why are this and that, reached out to you and you've not helped them or you're not guided them, but because you're self-conscious, as I say, if you're called into that, will haunt you and will ask you, will be like, why are you not helping this person? So honestly, if I'm in a position to, if I get an opportunity to, I really try as much as to help what I can. I don't know if I'm okay to be a mentor fully, because maybe I'm limited by my small education, my small experience. Probably when I get myself, I'm not equipped enough to be a mentor. But that's the small kids there in primary, in high school, I can tell them, yeah, you can prioritize studies at the moment, and then I can try and mentor them. But for people who are well versed, for people at the advanced levels, maybe I'm not very well equipped to do so. Maybe, I don't know, if one finds it okay, then that's fine, I can do it.
So what does the future hold for you? What are you aiming at? Maybe in the next 5 years or something like that.
I particularly like the first section of your question. What does the future hold to me? That's interesting. I don't know what the future holds for me, because as I said once again, I'm a Christian and a very strong Christian. So I believe he who started everything in us at the end in himself. That's God. So he's the author and finisher. And what he has started is going to finish. So honestly, I can't tell you. I only have, we all live because of hope. Even if you're not a Christian, hope is something that can keep you going. And whatever you can call the, anything that you call that, any belief that you have in, trust you me, there is hope in it. So I have just hope that my future is going to be successful, and I'm going probably to achieve the aims and targets that I have for my career, for instance, because I hope to be a scientist in future, and not just a scientist who writes grants and writes proposals and gets funds, but a scientist who can voice the policies that govern the world in terms of solving problems around health. Now that I'm in health research, that is biomedical and health research. So I believe that one day I'll sit on a round table with people or important key people in this world to make decisions.
So we're almost finishing. Have you had any unique experiences as a woman in science?
As a woman in science?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I've had so many experiences. Okay, I don't know what specifically you mean, but as a woman in science, one thing I know is that I'm not being a feminist, but women have been rare and not so many in science, but lately our number is increasing in science simply because maybe science was seen as a tough thing for the women. Mostly was appropriate for the men and such a thing. And maybe according to data, it shows that women in science are not paid as much as men in science. So that's another one challenge. But with the trend recently, I think that's been overcome. Like, we're going to overcome that, and everyone is going to voice policies and everything in the world in terms of science and everything. So, like the World Health Organization, there is a Kenyan who was the latest leaders nomination. There is I'm not going to mention names, but you'll check it out. I don't know if you know. There is a Kenyan lady who was nominated, and every other time, I've even a lecturer who has ever been nominated to be sitting at the round tables. I'm not saying just for World Health Organization, but other organizations like World Food Program, other organizations like United Nations, so many other organizations around the world globally. So we have a big percentage of men, and sometimes because you're just a woman, and especially how we Africans have the gender inequalities whereby woman is lesser than the man. Not everyone who views that, but a bigger percentage of us and cultural beliefs, they put us in a place where we are lesser. But I will also speak to fellow women in science or who aspire to be in science, and I would like, this should not be a limit, because when you do your thing, you present your papers, nothing is going to make you different from that man who is in science. So you have equal opportunities. Yeah, they say not really equal because maybe sometimes of the nature and biological differences, that sometimes you're going to have a maternity leave and such, but I don't believe in that, because yeah, as much as you're going to have maybe your 3 months off, it's not like you're going to be grounded. You're going to eventually get back to your thing if at all you plan. So I honestly feel this should not be a threat, because we are overcoming it with time.
Okay, I think that marks the end of the questions from my end. I'll just, before Valerie joins again, anything that you'd like to talk about that maybe you didn't ask and you'd like to share with people?
So just a quick one. Thank you for the interview, for the great questions, Dennis and everyone. So I hope I answered them according to your expectations, or even somewhere closer to your expectations, hopefully. So, and I hope it will help someone, I don't know. But one question that I will ask you, this information that you gather in terms of interviews, please tell me, say something about it a little bit.
So,
if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's okay. The first thing I think that motivated us to start the interviews is you will see a very big difference between the child who wants to be a musician or a politician and the child who wants to be a scientist. This child who wants to be a musician has all the exposure they want. They know all the steps to follow. In fact, they start practicing very early. But there's nowhere for the child who wants to be a scientist to go to. To have an expectation, an idea of what to expect. That's one thing that we saw, and we hope to change that, because by putting this on YouTube, and this being a .com generation, as we call it, these kids have smartphones. For us, we saw smartphones when we finished, high school. Some of them have smartphones in standard 6. But we hope that by seeing such interviews on social media, things like YouTube, they can get that motivation to be a scientist. The same way you used to see doctors and want to be a doctor, you used to see a pilot or an engineer and you want to be a pilot. I hope they can now see a scientist and say, okay, this is actually not boring. This is actually good. I want to be a scientist. So that's one. Number two is there's that imbalance as well between good news and bad news. Bad news sells, but bad news is equals to bad mental health, and it's an unfair report on what is happening in the world. But when you hear about what scientists are doing, you realize that there's more to this world than the bad things that are happening. The more we interview people, the more we see scientists trying to rectify the problems that are facing society. When you talk about antimicrobial resistance, the news will report AMR is so bad, we are losing these billions, the bacteria are getting strong, and they'll stop at that. But you talk to a scientist and you realize, someone is actually doing research to rectify AMR. Someone is concerned, someone who is smart is doing something about AMR. And that gives you hope. And also it gives you motivation to also do something to change the world, because you can see scientists are having a fulfilling career by changing the world, addressing the problems that the world is facing. So what about me? That means I can also do something about it. I can look at the problems that the world are facing and, get some inspiration to do something. So we hope by telling people the story of scientists, we can give people not just the motivation, but a pathway for them to solve the world's problems. When they hear about how someone went from undergraduate, to postgraduate, how they got their first job, how they got subsequent jobs, it gives people a clearer path than, someone who is just reading, not knowing, after all this theory, where am I going? What am I going to do? So we hope that will inspire not only our current generations, but also future generations. Some of our previous interviews are on YouTube. I think Valerie will share the channels with you so that you can view some of them. And you will see that you have actually performed quite well because you'll have a reference point with the interviews from other scientists. I don't know if Valerie is ready to come back in.
You're doing quite a good job as Valerie comes in. So keep on the good work. Maybe this is going to help some other people elsewhere. Yeah, it is, with no doubt, going to uplift our kids or someone's aspirations and maybe keep them going. Maybe they were almost giving up. So keep at that. Hold on to that. And you need to have the right one final message that I can tell them is that you just need to have the right attitude, positive attitude. And like my current mentor, the mentor who I have currently, who is also my supervisor at ILRI, he always tells me that do extra. Don't just do what you're needed to, just go extra and do that what everyone is not doing. That's how you're going to succeed. He tells me, study what is beyond, not in terms of class, what you're not given by the lecturer. So just do extra, have the right attitude, believe in God, have the right mentors and networks, and all will be well. Mental health issues is just about the right attitude and taking things as they come because God drives our lives, not us, and accepting His will because it's not us. So that's one final key message. Thank you.
Do you want to start your own podcast? Start with some simple gear that you already have and a quiet space. Simple gear includes a microphone, editing software, and host of your podcast. Simple microphones include the ones on your phones and computers, or a simple recorder, which you can upgrade later. For the editing software, I use Audacity, which is free and simple to use. Buzzsprout, which over 1,000 other fellow podcasters like me use, is one of the podcast hosting providers you can use. Buzzsprout has helped me link my show on every major podcast platform. With the endless number and regularly updated tutorials and good customer service support Buzzsprout offers, my podcasting journey has been made easy. Following the link in the show notes, let Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show.